Car crashes happen every day, but some are so jarring, so bizarre, and so deeply unsettling, they stick in the public's memory for years, even decades. These aren't just high-speed accidents or textbook collisions. No, these are chilling stories where the randomness of fate, lapses in judgment, and strange circumstances come together in the worst way possible. From luxury speedboats falling from the sky to a wedding night that turned into a national tragedy, these stories are unforgettable. Here are 5 of the most disturbing car crash deaths of all time, and the shocking, true stories behind them. 1. The Spanish speedboat that rained death. La Manga, Spain, 2024. It was just a quiet evening in November 2024 on the RM12 motorway in La Manga, Spain. A routine highway drive, the kind millions take every day, turned into a real-life horror scene. And all it took was one unfastened boat. 2 British men were killed and another critically injured after a 32-foot high-speed boat, known locally as a narcolancha. Yes, a boat often used in drug smuggling, detached from a trailer and flew through the air, straight into a seat lay-on carrying 3 vacationers. Now picture this. This wasn't some fishing boat. This thing was loaded with twin 300-horsepower engines. It was basically a missile on wheels. When it broke free at 120 kilometers per hour, it became a terrifying projectile with nowhere to go but forward and fast. The driver and front seat passenger in the car were killed on impact. The 3rd man sitting in the back somehow survived with critical injuries. Emergency crews had to work fast, pulling out victims while twisted metals, shattered glass, and wrecked cars surrounded them. But this crash didn't stop at one vehicle. The speedboat's deadly momentum caused a chain reaction. 6 more vehicles got dragged into the chaos. Some flipped over, some were pushed off the road. It was total destruction for more than 30 minutes before rescuers could even clear the wreckage. 2 women aged 18 and 55 and 2 men aged 19 and 29 were also rushed to hospitals with varying injuries. The scene looked like something out of a war zone. Debris, blood, glass, and screams. And what triggered all of it? Poorly secured cargo. The boat was being towed, but not properly. Whoever was responsible for hauling it failed to secure it tightly. Worse, they fled the scene, disappearing before authorities even showed up. Supermarket receipts were the only clues left in the wreckage. Investigators combed through surveillance footage from nearby stores, hoping to identify the mystery driver, possibly connected to smuggling operations. But as of now, no arrests have been made. The victims, 3 British nationals on what was likely just a golf getaway, had their lives obliterated in seconds. Their vehicle, filled with golf clubs, was headed toward the La Manga Golf and Tennis Resort, but they never made it. Photos of the wreck told the whole story. A giant speedboat lying across the motorway like a corpse, surrounded by bent cars, shattered windshields, and the quiet horror of what had just happened. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It was an explosive mix of recklessness and criminal suspicion. And the worst part, the one person who could answer for it, the boat's driver, vanished without a trace. 2. The digger arm that became a death trap. Castle and Dinas, UK, 1995. Fast forward to December 15th, 1995. A foggy night in Cornwall, UK, a place known for its ancient history and seaside cliffs. Not horrifying vehicle deaths, but that night tragedy struck in a way no one could have imagined. Mark Wade, a 31-year-old truck driver, was transporting a massive Caterpillar digger on a low-loader lorry. He'd been driving since early morning, exhausted after a full workday. But exhaustion wasn't the problem. A simple oversight was. The heavy digger's arm, a piece of steel machinery meant to crush rock, hadn't been properly fastened. As Wade made his way along a narrow country road near Castle and Dinas, the arm swung into oncoming traffic like a guillotine. What happened next was pure carnage. 4 cars were headed in the opposite direction. The digger's arm, now a deadly swinging pendulum, crashed into them, ripping roofs off like tin cans. 5 people were killed instantly. 3 men, 2 women, passengers who had no idea their lives were about to end in the most violent way possible. Emergency services rushed to the scene. 10 ambulances, firefighters from Newquay, Wadebridge, Penzance, and Bodmin, but nothing could undo the sheer level cycle of devastation. Some of the injured survived with severe trauma, but for many, the psychological damage never healed. Mark Wade himself was never the same. Investigations showed he hadn't secured the arm properly. Despite having the necessary metal pins and chains in his truck, he simply thought the load was stable. Even worse, Wade had never been trained to haul heavy equipment safely. His employers, Basley Plant Hire and Cheptow Plant Hire, failed to provide basic safety training. They were later fined £500,000 for negligence. As for Wade, he didn't go to prison. Diagnosed with severe PTSD and depression, he was sent to a psychiatric facility. 2 independent psychiatric reports confirmed he was mentally unfit, but emotionally he was destroyed, and so were the first responders. One firefighter, Richard Buck, responded to the scene that night. The trauma of witnessing such destruction overwhelmed him. He was a loving father, known for his sense of humor, but 8 months later, unable to cope with what he'd seen, he took his own life. Decades later, Richard's name was added to the National Firefighters Memorial in London. A plaque was placed at his station, but the emotional scars left behind for families, responders, and even Wade never truly faded. All from one unsecured piece of machinery. Third, a wedding celebration that turned to horror. Hunter Valley, Australia, 2023. Weddings are supposed to be joyful, but for one group of friends and family in New South Wales, Australia, what began as a celebration ended in a tragedy that still haunts the country. June 11, 2023. Guests had gathered at the beautiful Wandin Valley estate in Lovedale for the wedding of Mitchell Gaffney and Malene Edsel. The evening was filled with dancing, speeches, and smiles. At the end of the night, 35 guests boarded a chartered bus to head back to their hotel in Singleton, just a 30-minute drive. But on the M15 Wine Country Drive, disaster was waiting. As the bus approached a roundabout in thick fog, the driver, 58-year-old Brett Button, lost control. The vehicle rolled onto its side, skidding violently. 10 people died. Among the dead were young football players, mothers, sons, and community leaders. Names like Kaya and Noreen McBride, Zachary Bray, and Rebecca Mullen became forever etched into Australia's memory. Another 25 guests were injured, some critically. As emergency services tried to process the scale of the crash, investigators quickly uncovered disturbing details. Button had taken tramadol, a prescription opioid, earlier that day, in doses higher than what was medically advised. Known to cause drowsiness and impair judgment, tramadol had already caused problems for Button. He'd been let go from a previous job for being dependent on it, and yet he was still driving buses. On top of that, Button was speeding. He hit the roundabout too fast in low visibility. His decision, clouded by drugs, poor judgment, and recklessness, led to the worst bus crash Australia had seen in decades. Initially charged with dangerous driving causing death, prosecutors later considered manslaughter, but in the end, he struck a plea deal. Manslaughter charges were dropped, and many families were furious. He was sentenced to 32 years in prison, with a 24-year non-parole period. To support the grieving families, a national campaign raised $1.5 million, but no amount of money could replace the lives lost on that foggy night, and questions remain. Why was a driver with a known drug history behind the wheel? Could stricter oversight have saved lives? 4. When a private jet crashed into a family car, Mesa, Arizona, February 13, 2024. Mesa, Arizona. Ray Longi, a 67-year-old aviation enthusiast and beloved grandfather, was driving to pick up his wife at the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. It was a drive he had done countless times, but this time he would never arrive. Just as Ray's red Lexus cruised down Greenfield Road, a private jet attempting to take off from nearby Falcon Field suddenly lost control. The jet never got off the ground. Instead, it veered off the runway and crashed straight into Ray's car. The impact was instant. Ray died at the scene. The plane continued its path of destruction, crashing through the road, plowing into an orchard, and bursting into flames. On board were 4 passengers: Drew Kimball, his 12-year-old son Grom, Spencer Lindell, and Rustin Randall. None of them survived. A 5th teenage passenger escaped, but suffered life-threatening burns. Witnesses said the jet never even lifted. Just a mechanical failure. A Pilot error. Something else? The truth is still under investigation. Ray's family couldn't believe the news. He lived blocks away from that airport. A man who loved planes, who could identify them by sound, was killed by one just minutes from home. Ray had a deep passion for aviation. He worked in aircraft sales, lived abroad, and spent weekends watching takeoffs with his daughter. He was a family man, a volunteer, and a local hero in quiet ways. Just minutes before the crash, he had texted his daughter, "Everything okay?" That would be the last message he ever sent. 5. The Chappaquiddick Tragedy, Massachusetts, 1969. Some crashes end lives, others end careers, and a few do both. July 18th, 1969, Chappaquiddick Island, Massachusetts. Senator Edward Ted Kennedy, brother to President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert F. Kennedy, was attending a gathering with former campaign workers. Among them was 28-year-old Mary Jo Kopechne, a brilliant young political aide. That night, Kennedy and Kopechne left the party. According to his statement, he was simply giving her a ride, but she left behind her handbag and hotel keys, and that raised immediate doubts. While speeding on an unlit road, Kennedy's car flew off a small bridge into a tidal pond, flipping upside down in the water. Kennedy escaped. Mary Jo did not. Instead of calling the police, Kennedy walked back to the party, past multiple homes, and quietly told friends what had happened, but no one reported the crash. Kennedy returned to his hotel, changed clothes, and waited until the next morning to notify police. By then, Mary Jo's body had already been found by local fishermen. No autopsy was performed. The official cause of death was drowning, but many, including the diver who recovered her body, believed she might have survived for hours inside an air pocket, waiting for help that never came. The public backlash was immediate. Why didn't Kennedy act sooner? Why the secrecy? Was it panic or political calculation? In court, Kennedy received a 2-month suspended sentence for leaving the scene of an accident. That was it. Mary Jo's life was over. Kennedy's political career survived, but his presidential aspirations never recovered. And decades later, the Chappaquiddick incident remains one of the most disturbing and controversial car-related deaths in American history. Some crashes are unfortunate, others are unforgivable. Whether it was a flying speedboat, a forgotten safety pin, a bus driver's reckless decisions, or a U.S. senator walking away from an overturned car, these stories show just how fragile life can be when even a single choice goes wrong. Each crash left behind shattered lives, unanswered questions, and communities changed forever. If this video struck a chord, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with others. For more stories that dive deep into the real, the raw, and the unforgettable, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And if there's a story you believe the world should hear, drop it in the comments. Stay aware, stay safe, and remember, even routine drives can turn deadly in the blink of an eye.